Before we get into this new Erika Jayne Girardi, Tom Girardi, juicy illegal filing, I want to tell you a quick thing about USAA. So here is today's USAA post. As you guys know, USAA has left me and my son in a hotel room for 8 weeks, of which I paid most of it, and has not really helped me at all, and has done some things that are really unethical. And as a result of that, I am doing a quick deep dive on USAA and incorporating it into some of my video content to protect vets and military people from falling victim to what I can see as corruption within the USAA ranks, at least that's been happening in the last 10 years. So this is Jacqueline Jaeger's compliance article that she wrote about USAA. And I had posted another one that she did where she's trying to call out that USAA is doing really bad things within the constructs of the company in a way that's flabbergasted this expert journalist in compliance. And here's another one. Okay, you can see, if you go 2 videos back to the end, you can see one I did a few days ago. So USAA whistleblowers want to be heard, and now. In the 15 years I've been writing for Compliance Week, never have I covered a company that has evoked as much anger and palpable relief from so many current and former employees as USAA. Anger toward its corporate executives, so much so that they didn't want to come public with their whistleblowing and complaints. Excuse me? Then I found this online, an employee that wanted to unlive themselves because of their experience working at USAA. I won't read it to you because we're on YouTube, but you can stop and read it for yourself. Now, I reported that I was shocked that the CEO of USAA took one of the largest salary increases of any providing company in the last year. Okay, really odd to me because I'm like, the company has never had more complaints and problems, and the CEO gets rewarded the most ever out of any provider. But it wasn't just him, it was other senior executives as well. They all seem to take these huge pay raises. Meanwhile, USAA has never had more complaints and has these kind of compliance allegations being made at them. Something stinks. Please warn your family and friends that serve or are family members in the military that something is definitely off. Now let's get into the video. Real Housewives of Beverly Hills gossip. All right, so let's get into today's video. I was inspired to do it because Ronald Richards posted a filing that the prosecution office against Tom Girardi in his criminal case and Chris Kamon filed. And what this document said was that the government wants to be able to show expenditures that Tom Girardi took from Girardi Keys' client accounts and put in Erika Jayne Girardi's entertainment account. They want to be able to present to a jury these expenses, which the government believes is $25 million worth, to say to a jury, hey, listen, this is all inappropriate misuse of client funds. Tom Girardi was not allowed to take client money and put it over here to pay, Erika Jayne Girardi's lavish lifestyle and entertainment career. And so this was the big filing that they made. What happened was Tom Girardi's team was saying, listen, I really want to keep this evidence out because it's not related to the indictment. And he was saying, listen, I had to move money around and liquidate personal assets to try to cover some of this debt because the company was having a big problem and I couldn't figure out why. And I think it was Chris Kamon who was taking and stealing money from the firm to fund his lavish lifestyle somewhere else. And I, Tom Girardi, was innocent in all this because I was just selling stuff and trying to plug the holes. This gentleman, the CFO of my company, Chris Kamon, was stealing out of the company. So I was trying to sell stuff. I didn't know what was going on. We kept having a shortfall. And the prosecutor's like, nah, it's not totally accurate. We appreciate the gesture. But the truth is that you started overspending your clients' monies, you got into trouble, you knew you were going to get caught, so you tried to sell some stuff to like make it so people didn't report you to the law enforcement, which they'd been doing for years, but everybody ignored, but we'll put that on the side. That's what you were really doing. You were trying to cover your tracks. And we have a lot of proof that you took client money and used it for illegal activity. And by illegal activity, meaning not to pay your clients, because pretty much anything in a client account that is used for expenses not directly related to that person's case or paying them out their restitution is considered illegal use of proceeds, because that's not what it's for. And there's strict rules around that with attorneys. So this is what's happening, and the government put their argument forth as to why they need to be able to include all the expenditure that EJ Global received as part of their case to show Tom Girardi using the $25 million inappropriately. And that's a huge gratuitous number, which means that he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail based on the sentencing guidelines if that number is all deemed fraud. And the reason that Tom Girardi's team does not want that in there is because they know that. Because the way the sentencing guidelines works in the US is one of the ways you get points, like a video game, is the amount of money that they can attach to what they feel is illegal. So if it's like under $500,000, it's 2 points up. If it's over $1 million, it's like 3 points up. If it's, over $2 million, it's 5 points up, and it keeps going and going and going. And the more points you get, the more time in prison. That's how it goes. It's like a video game. Yeah. So here's some of the more important aspects of the filing that went today. Now, we don't know the response if the judge is going to let them use Erika Jayne Girardi's EJ Global accounting to fight this case, but they might. And I do think the judge will allow it, because the judge is really, they're at this point, once you're in an indictment, the judge is most often going to side with the prosecution's office no matter what. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So here's the important part of this filing. During the motion hearing that happened last Thursday in LA, the counsel for the defendants of Girardi asserted that they will seek to exculpate their client in part by placing blame for the misappropriation of Girardi Key's client funds on defendant Kamon. Specifically, that the side fraud scheme explains the large deficits in the trust and operating accounts at Girardi Keys. This is a defense they're working on. Counsel for the defendant, Girardi, also intimated that it planned to introduce evidence that during the relevant time period, defendant Girardi was liquidating personal assets and depositing those funds into the firm's accounts to cover expenses, including paying certain victims. At a meet and confer session attended by the government and counsel for defendant Girardi outside the courtroom after the motions hearing, the government notified counsel for defendant Girardi that if defendant Girardi sought to place blame for the massive fraud at Girardi Keys solely on defendant Kamon, or introduce evidence of defendant Girardi's personal money used to cover expenses during the relevant time period, the government would rebut those allegations with evidence previously produced to both defendants during discovery, that during the same time frame as the charged conduct in this case, defendant Girardi diverted tens of millions from the Girardi Keys operating account to pay illegitimate expenses, including over $25 million to pay the expenses of EJ Global. That's Erika Jayne. That's what that acronym stands for. A company formed by his spouse related to her entertainment career. Notwithstanding that, let me say that again, a company formed by his spouse related to her entertainment career, notwithstanding the defendant's embezzlement and misappropriation is already identified in the indictment as part of the defendant's scheme to defraud. And then they do like a note. The government expressed to counsel for defendant Girardi that such evidence, including specifics about defendant Girardi's misappropriation to pay EJ Global expenses, would be necessary to rebut any allegation that defendant Girardi's lies to clients about their settlement in efforts to lull them into accepting delays in payments of their settlement funds was due to defendant Girardi's efforts to, quote, plug holes in the balance sheet caused by defendant Kamon's side fraud scheme. Counsel for defendant Girardi responded that they would confer and respond to the government's position via email. The government subsequently received an email and attached it, and it's not in here, but they did. Okay, so this is another good part. Authorization of payments out of the Girardi Case bank accounts to pay illegitimate expenses, including the expenses of EJ Global, is direct evidence of, if not inextricably intertwined with, the charged fraud scheme. It should therefore be admissible at trial because, inter alia, the evidence is both, number one, part of the transactions that serve as the basis for the criminal charges. That's interesting. And number two, necessary for the government to present a coherent theory of its case. So in conclusion, to dumb this way down, the government is saying you shouldn't be able to really introduce the fact that Tom Girardi liquidated personal assets to try to, give money to clients to plug up holes, right? Because it's not really relevant to the fact that he took money out and paid personal expenses with it. You're not supposed to do that, period. The end. It's a nice try, but it doesn't fly here. And then they're also saying simultaneously that just because they didn't mention in the indictment EJ Global specifically, it was implied that that was part of the scheme. And so therefore, they should still be able to, get into the accounting of EJ Global to show what Tom Girardi was taking money out of the client accounts for, which was to fund Erika Jayne Girardi's television lifestyle, her music career, and everything that has gone into her persona, essentially. So that's it. But Erika Jayne Girardi has still not been called out as knowing anything in this, which means she might not have. So there you go. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification button.